Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, I'll show you how to knit this top-down sweater for any size. I hope you will enjoy this, and if you do, don't forget to hit subscribe, like this video, and let's get into it. Now to make this sweater you will need Aran weight yarn, and I have this Drops Aran blown yarn in this green color that I'm gonna be using. Then you will need 5.5 and 6mm needles. I'm using Knit Pro along with 40, 60 and 80 centimeter cables. Then you will need stitch markers, needle and scissors. And I'm doing size small, so I'm going to be casting on 92 stitches in total. And whatever number you cast on, you want that number to be multiples of 4 because it's going to be 2x2 ribbing. So you will want to do a gauge swatch and see how many stitches you would need for your color ribbing. To cast on, make a slip knot, put your needle on, and cast on any number that's multiples of 4, which is 92 for me. And I have my 92 stitches. Now before I can go in and join it in a round, I will need to cast on an extra one, which we will lose when we join in a round. So I'm casting my 93rd one here. Now to join it in a round, you want to grab your first stitch on your left needle purlwise. Grab that. And then with your left needle, grab the first stitch on your right needle and bring it over. Like so. And then you can drop the stitch off, tighten it up, and bring this one stitch back on your left needle. So that's now joined in a round. Add a stitch marker to mark beginning of your round. And you can begin your first round, which is going to be knit 2, purl 2, and repeat. So go as to knit your first stitch. It's gonna be pretty tight at first, but once you do this row, it's gonna be a bit looser. I'm gonna knit my second. To do my purls, I'm bringing my tail forward and going purlwise. Like so. One more time to purl. Then bringing my tail to the back, going as to knit, that's 1, going as to knit, that's 2. Again, the next 2 are purl, so go as to purl and purl the stitch, the same with your second one. And this is what you will repeat. So knit 2, purl 2, and repeat. And once you do finish this row, it's gonna be a bit better, not as tight as it is now. Now I'm at the end of my row and I have 2 stitches left. I just did my 2 knits. And my last 2 stitches will be purls. If your row does not end with 2 purls, that means that you haven't got multiples of 4 or you misplaced your stitches somewhere along the way. So make sure that it ends with 2 purls and it aligns with the pattern. Just gonna purl these 2. Transfer your stitch marker over, and you will repeat this row as many times as you want. I'm going to be doing 12 rounds in total for my color ribbing. Basically what it is, it's exact same thing. So you always knit your knit stitches, it's 1 and 2, and you always purl your purls. And then you just repeat it around. When you come to your stitch marker, move it on and do the same thing over again. Now once you have your color ribbing done, I have mine here and it's 12 rounds in total. You're gonna change your needles to 6mm ones, but you only want to change your right one because it might be too tight to switch this one. So for now, I'm just gonna switch my right one. And then you will need 3 more stitch markers that are different from the one that marks beginning of your round. And before we can do our setup round where we will be placing those stitch markers, you will need to decide how many stitches you need for the front, back, and both sleeves. So basically both sleeves will be identical and both front and back will be the same as well. So what we are doing is initially dividing our work into 4 parts. And the easiest way to do this, now it doesn't matter how many stitches you have, it's pretty simple to figure this out. So imagine this is your round of stitches. For me, it's 92 stitches in total, and what I do is I divide my number by 3, and basically 1/3 is for the front, 1/3 is for the back, and 1/3 split in 2 is my sleeves. So both sleeves are also 1/3, and I can divide 92 by 3. So what I do is I basically divide my 90 by 3, which is 30 each. So I'm gonna be having 30 stitches for the front, 30 for the back, and I have 30 to share between the 2 sleeves, which will be 15 each, and I still have those 2 stitches left. So you can either put those 2, one for each sleeve or one for back and front. I'm just gonna do 16 for my sleeves. And once you have those 4 numbers, you want to make sure that once you add them up, you get your number of total stitches. So yeah, and this setup round is gonna be knits. So I'm just gonna move my stitch marker and I'm gonna knit amount for the sleeve. So it's 16 for me. I'm just gonna knit that. So that's 16, which is my sleeve. I'm gonna add my first stitch marker, first new stitch marker, and now I'm gonna be knitting for the front. So it's 30 for me. I'm gonna knit that 30 stitches. After 30 knits, I'm gonna place another stitch marker. And this is where my second sleeve comes in, which is again 16 stitches. So I'm gonna knit 16. So that's 16, and I'm gonna be adding my last stitch marker here. And you should have left with your stitches for the back or the front. It doesn't really matter because they are identical, but I have 30. And that's my setup round done. Now from here it's gonna be 2 row repeat, 1 round where you are increasing and 1 round of knits, which I'm gonna show you now. So transfer your stitch marker. Now each increase round that we complete will add 8 increases, and this is because we will be doing 2 increases for each part. So basically your sleeve will increase by 2 stitches, your front and back will increase by 2, as well as the other sleeve. So yeah, basically with every single round of increases, you will have 8 increases, 2 for each part. Every single one placed where the stitch marker is. So 1 before, 1 after, 1 before, 1 after, and so on. And it's gonna be 2 different increases. One that's leaning towards left and one that's leaning towards right. So basically when you look at your section having the 2 stitch markers, this increase made here is always gonna be leaning left and this one leaning right. Then when you come to your second section, increase placed here is gonna be leaning left and this one leaning right. Same with this section and same with your last section. So when you have just put your stitch marker over, it's time to make the first increase. And you always want to make your increase after knitting 1 stitch. So you will knit 1 stitch and increase is gonna be placed here. So if you see your 2 knit stitches here, there's a bar in between this one here, and to make 1 left, which is an increase, you want to pick up that loop from the front like this and go with your needle through the back loop of that stitch you just picked up. So go through the back of that stitch you just picked up, which can be quite hard, and if it feels hard, you are doing it right. But basically, if you're struggling to go, you can just kind of do this, and that's in the back loop, and just knit that stitch. So that's one increase done. Now you're gonna knit until you have one stitch left before stitch marker. And that's one stitch left. Now to do increase, that's right leaning, you want to pick up this same loop that you did for your other one, but do it from the back. So pick up the loop this way, and you will be going through the front of the loop, which again can be quite tricky, but go through the front loop and knit your stitch. Then knit your last one, move your stitch marker, and we just moved into our new section. So again, knit one stitch after the stitch marker, and this is where we will place increase, which is again left leaning. And to do left leaning decrease, you pick up this loop here through the front like this, and you go through the back loop of that recently picked up stitch and do knit to increase. Then you're just gonna knit until you have one stitch left before your stitch marker. And when you are where you have one stitch before the stitch marker, you will need to make one right. To make one right, you go from the back and pick up that loop in between your stitches. And to knit it, you go from the front, like so, and knit it. Then knit your stitch, move your stitch marker, knit one stitch, and this is again where you will be making one left. To make one left, you pick up your loop from the front, like this, and you go through the back loop, knit it, then knit until you have one stitch left before the stitch marker. When you have one stitch left, you will again need to make one right, which is going and picking up the stitch from the back and knitting through the front. Then knit your stitch, move the stitch marker, knit one stitch, and make one left. So pick up your loop from the front, then knit through the back and knit until you come to the stitch marker where you have one stitch left. When you have one stitch left, you're gonna make one right, which is gonna be your last increase for the round. To make one right, go and pick up the loop through the back and knit through the front, then knit your stitch, and that's your increase round complete. Don't forget to change your other needle as well after your setup round. Now, like I said, your second round is gonna be just knits, and you knit all of your stitches around until you come to this same stitch marker here. And now once you finish your knit round, this is what you will repeat. So with every single increase round, you are increasing by 8 stitches. Then you're doing knit round, and you will need to repeat these 2 rows, increase row and knit row, until your work is the length that reaches your underarm area. And also at some point you will have to switch to 60 centimeter cables when you can't fit all of your stitches. And I'm now done with my increases. So this is my front, which is identical to the back, and I have 80 stitches in total. So I basically did 50 rows, 25 of them were increases. And this is how my sleeve part looks like. So from stitch marker to stitch marker, it's a bit curling. As you can see, I have the two cables connecting, but basically this is what will fit me. And I'm now at underarm part, and for both of my sleeves I have 66 stitches each, but now I'm ready to work on my body. Now once your sweater fits at this part, it needs to be big enough for the circumference of your chest, even though we will add a couple of stitches, but you want to make sure that it's already big enough. I've just removed my stitch marker. So that's the beginning of the round stitch marker. I'm just gonna take it off. And you either want to prepare 2 needles with cables on it or needle with some scrap yarn, because we will use that to hold our sleeve stitches. And for me, the first set of stitches until the next stitch marker is my sleeve. I'm gonna straight away go and grab all of my stitches onto my cable. And you can do this with just a needle and some thread that's long enough. So just have long enough of a scrap yarn and use that instead. I'm just gonna take this needle off that I just used and switching it with a stopper instead. And now my sleeve is on like this, so it's gonna be held with this cable here because I'm only gonna work on it later on. Now once you have put your stitches onto the cable or a yarn scrap, you can remove your stitch marker, and we will now need to join the front with the back together. So we will be ignoring the sleeve for now, and from here you won't have any increases or decreases. It's just gonna be rows of knits until you come to the bottom ribbing. But before you can join these two, ideally you want to cast on some stitches for the underarm area, and I'm gonna do 6, but you can do as many as you want. And after casting on 3, I'm gonna place my stitch marker because this is going to be my new beginning of the round. And why after the 3 is just because that's the middle of the side of the sweater. So whatever number you are casting on, don't forget to put the stitch marker in the middle of those cast on stitches. And to cast on, you're gonna use a backwards loop method, which is just basically casting on like this. So that's 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna put my beginning of the round stitch marker and I'm gonna cast on another 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3, 6 in total. And then I'm gonna go back to the other side, which is either the back or the front, both the same. And I'm gonna knit until the next stitch marker. So as normal, just go ahead and knit your stitches. When you reach your next stitch marker, take it off, grab your second holder and transfer all of those stitches for the sleeve on hold. And my second sleeve stitches are here. Take the stitch marker off and you will have your front or the back left. So pretty much the same thing, just fold them in like so. And before you join those together, cast on the same amount of stitches as you did before. That is 6 for me. I'm not gonna put a stitch marker on because I already have that where the round starts. And now I'm again going to knit until that stitch marker. So just let me do that, and I'll show you what to do with your cast on stitches underarm. And I'm now almost at the end of my round, so I'm just gonna knit until I come to the cast on. And now for this cast on, it will be a bit loose, but don't worry about it, just knit them the same way you do your normal stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, and another 3 left. Two and 3. I'm gonna continue knitting for the next round, and I will do the same with my other cast on stitches. But basically from here you are going to work your knit stitches in a round until your sweater becomes to your preferred length. And just have in mind that you will be adding ribbing on top of that, so you can leave as many space for the ribbing as you want. If you're going to do the same length as your color, you can just basically measure that and leave this much of allowance. But yeah, my cat is going crazy now, so I'm just gonna go and work on my body, which is just the same rows all over again, and I'll show you how to do the ribbing then. And I'm now at the part where I'm gonna be doing my bottom ribbing. So basically from the underarm, I did 52 rows. This is how it looks. It is pretty cropped, but you can do as many rows as you want. And now I'm gonna be doing the bottom ribbing. So I already switched my needles to 5.5mm ones. And this is again going to be 2x2 ribbing, so you need multiples of 4. Mine was 80 for the front, 80 for the back, and 6 for both underarms. So mine is multiple of 4, but you should still have even number of stitches, so you might need to decrease by 2 if your number of stitches that you currently have is not multiples of 4. So let's say mine is 172, which is multiples of 4, but if I had 170, I would need to decrease 2 stitches somewhere along the way, and I would just suggest to decrease where you have your underarms. Just make that decrease on one side, the other on the other side, and then just do everything as normal. And for that 2x2 ribbing, you will be going and knitting your 2 stitches, then purling your next 2, and you will repeat this all around. So, and I'm gonna be doing this for the next 20 rounds, but you can again do as long as you want bottom ribbing. Once you finish that, I'm gonna show you how to cast off. And when you come to the end of your first ribbing round, make sure that the last 2 stitches are purls. If you started with 2 knits, then just transfer your stitch marker and work the same stitches all around as many times as you wanted. So again, it's gonna be knit your knit, again knit your knit, and then purl your purl stitches. So I'm gonna do this again 20 times in total, and I'm gonna see you at the end. And I am done with my ribbing now, so I'm gonna be casting off. I'm gonna take the stitch marker, and to cast off, you want to start by knitting your first 2 stitches. So 1 and 2, and then you will be pulling this second one over the first one. So go and grab that second stitch and bring it over. Now you only have 1 stitch, so you need another, but the next one is purl. So I'm gonna purl 1, and I have 2 stitches. So again, I'm grabbing this second one and bringing it over. I have one, I need another, so I'm gonna purl because it's purl. And again, just bring it over like this. Then you just basically follow the pattern. So the next one is knit, bring it over, again knit, bring it over. The next one is purl, and I think you already get this. I'm gonna do this all around until I have casted off all of my stitches. At the end, you will have one stitch on your right needle. Just yarn over and pull it through that loop. Finish off with a bit of a tail, cut it off and pull through. Now I'm just going back to my sleeve and I'm taking off these stoppers, which I'm gonna switch with my 6mm needles. And I already had my 40cm cable holding these stitches, so all I was left to do is to put my needles on and that's it. But if yours is on a piece of yarn, just grab your 40cm cable with your 6mm needles and bring your stitches onto that cable. Now you will have this underarm area where you will need to pick up your stitches. I had 6, so I'm gonna pick up 6 here. You will end up with some gapping on both sides, but that's fine. We can just sew it later on, and for that you want to start with a longer tail of your yarn so that we have enough to sew this in, or you can just basically cast on a couple of stitches extra. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna cast on 6. I'm just gonna find my first stitch, grab my yarn with a lot of tail. I'm gonna tuck that tail in. That's my 1 stitch, 2 and 3. I'm gonna bring in the stitch marker in the middle of my cast stitches. So I picked up 3, I add a stitch marker and I'm gonna pick another 3. And that's gonna be your new beginning of the round. Now you're gonna go ahead and knit all around for your sleeve. I am now almost at the end of my round. I have my stitches that I picked up and it's no different. You just knit those the same as your regular stitches. Move your stitch marker and go all around with your knit row until the sleeve becomes long enough. But you need to leave allowance for the cuff ribbing. So whatever ribbing length you decide to do for your cuff, take that off in centimeters and build up on your length for sleeve. Once you do that, I'll show you how to do cuff ribbing. So I'm just gonna repeat my knit rows for quite some time, and yeah, I will meet you at the end. And I have now finished the length of my sleeve. So from the underarm I did 88 stitches and I basically left the length of the ribbing that I want to do, which is going to be 20 rounds, again the same as I had for the bottom of my sweater. So this is where I will be stopping and doing my cuff ribbing. But before I can do that, basically I'm going to be decreasing a couple of stitches, which you don't have to do if you don't want to. Even though I have multiples of 4, I want to decrease it a bit, so I will do 8 decreases to maintain multiples of 4 and I will evenly place it. It works out for me as knit 7 and decrease and then repeat it 8 times in total, and I will end up with 56 stitches for my cuff. If you don't have multiples of 4, you will need to at least decrease until you have multiples of 4 for the 2x2 ribbing. So I'm gonna knit 7. And then I'm gonna knit 2 together, which is basically the same as knit 1. You just go through both at the same time to make a decrease. And I'm gonna repeat this another 7 times. Now you want to switch to your 5.5mm needles, and instead of switching, I'm gonna be using 80cm cable for the magic loop because it is a bit tight, so it's gonna be easier for me to work the cuff ribbing. And for now, I'm just gonna take the stitch marker off. If your cuff isn't too tight, you can just switch your needles and keep the cable. But I'm gonna be working this in a magic loop. So again, for the ribbing, it's gonna be knit 2, purl 2, and repeat. So you're gonna do this all around. When you come to an end, you want to make sure that the last stitches of yours are purls if you started with knits. I'm now gonna set my old needles with a cable aside. I'm gonna find the middle of my stitches, and I'm basically gonna pull on the cable like this, splitting those in half. This is how the magic loop method works. You have some cable separating your work in half. I'm gonna put a stitch marker just in case, and I'm gonna push this needle all the way to my stitches, and then I'm gonna bring this cable so that I have some cable to work my stitches. And now I'm gonna be doing another 19 rounds, or until I have 20 for the ribbing, which is exact same thing. And you just go ahead, knit your knits and purl your purl stitches. I'm gonna do this half of my work, and I'll show you what to do if you are doing it with a magic loop method. And now I did half my work, so I'm just gonna turn it this way. And I'm gonna pull on my left needle so that it goes where the stitches are, and I'm gonna pull on my working needle like so to have enough to work your stitches. So what you initially have is like this infinity where you have enough cable on this side and enough cable here where you work your stitches, and you just go around that way if your cables are too big for the cuff. So I'm gonna repeat this until I have my ribbing for the cuff finished, and I'm gonna meet you at the end on how to cast it off and hide the tails. And I have now finished my sleeve ribbing. Again, I've got 20 rounds in total, and this is where I'm gonna cast off. So you already know this, but I'm gonna show you one more time because I am using this magic loop method. It's again going to be a ribbing wise cast off where you knit your knits and purl your purls. And to start, I need 2 stitches, so I'm gonna knit my first 2. When you have 2 on your right needle, you're gonna go and grab the first one and bring it over, and you're left with 1. Now the next one on my left needle is purl, so I'm gonna purl, and that's 2 on my right needle. Again, grabbing the first one and bringing it over. I need another stitch, so I'm gonna go and purl, bring over, and just like that, I'm gonna cast off all of my stitches for the sleeve. And when you finish your cast off, yarn over and pull through, cut your yarn off and tighten it up. Now when you cast off, you'll see that these 2 edges don't match, but we will fix it in a second when we hide our tails. Now to hide the tails, you want to grab your needle, and from the right side, go into the first knit stitch. So these 2 are your purls and this is your knit, so just go like this, and this will even everything out. And then go into your wrong side. And what I like to do for the tails that are for the ribbing, so when you cast off and you have the ribbing, I like to go into the knit loops. So I'll basically be going and picking every single loop like this. My needle is tilted, so it's easier for me to do that, but you can also just simply go into one loop, pull it through into your second one, and so on. And then when I reach the top, I'm gonna do the same exact thing, but down the bottom to just make sure that it doesn't come out. Now you will also have these two gaps where your underarm is, and I have left a long tail for this. I'm on my wrong side and I'm gonna kind of close them up. I'm just gonna go from one side into another. And then from above into the same place I started. And this should close off just like so. Now, if you still see some sort of gap, just repeat the same thing one more time. And this one is done. Now with the same tail, I'm just gonna make my way here. And repeat the same exact thing for this other gap as well. I've got another gap here, so again, same thing. And it's all done. Now I'm only left to hide this tail, and to hide it you just basically want to replicate your knits so that it doesn't show on the right side. And to do that, if you just kind of stretch out your work, you should be able to see your knits. So this is your purl, and you want to go through 2 purls, so one in the middle and one on the side, and then from the top you want to go into another and down into the bottom one. So it might be a bit hard to understand because this is a bit fuzzier yarn, but I'm going into the purl on a side, pulling it through, and then I'm going into the purl on the other side and down into the bottom one. So I'm just initially going through 3 purls, 2 at a time, and then another 2 from the top, and I'm gonna move to the next one and do the same thing. And then I will repeat this until I feel like it's secure enough. When you're done, cut it off. Hide any other of your tails the same way I just did this. Make your second sleeve exactly the same, and this is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe, like this video, and I'll see you in my next one.